I now call to order the Society's 2523rd meeting in what is now the 154th year since its founding on March 13th, 1871. Good evening, everyone. My name is Larry Milstein. I am the president of PSW, one of the oldest scientific societies of Washington, D.C., committed to providing a forum to further scientific understanding and inquiry to as broad an audience as possible. Welcome to our members, guests, and friends to the lecture part of today's PSW meeting and to the lecture by Neil Johnson on AI's Jekyll and Hyde tipping point, the science of when good AI will go bad. To start with, let's thank our sponsors, beginning with PSW member Mike Helton and Helton Associates, LLC. He's in the audience, so big hand. Thank you, Mike. PSW member Joel Schulman and the Schulman Foundation. Let's have a good hand for Joe. And the sponsor of tonight's lecture, PSW member Tim Thomas, who is here with us. Thank you, Tim. The Society needs their support and yours to meet its expenses, which are considerable. So if you haven't given or you feel you can give more than you've already given, please do not hesitate to donate. And we have many donors in the audience tonight, and I want to thank all of them, even though we're not naming them individually. I'm pleased to announce the following new members. Nadia Karamcheva, an economist with the Congressional Budget Office and with Johns Hopkins University, interested in economics, physics, biology, and astronomy, maybe an astronomer too, who learned of PSW from a friend. Catherine Bennett, a senior manager with NAVA PBC, interested in computer science and AI, who learned of PSW from folks at Mensa, Maryland. Fire safety engineering, who learned of PSW from communications at the Cosmos Club. Gabrielle Grunau, a retired psychologist interested in organizational psychology, who learned of PSW from William Grosshandler. Gary Barnard, president of XISP, Inc., Extraordinary Innovative Space Partnerships, interested in robotics and space systems engineering, who learned of PSW from PSW member Paul Werbos. Elizabeth Gerald, an accounting director interested in psychology, AI, and ethics relating to AI, who learned of PSW from a Cosmos Club member. Robert Jolly, senior defense analyst with RAND, interested in engineering and national security, quantum computing, space, and industrial policy, who learned of PSW from a former PSW member, who, he says, will be rejoining PSW soon. Newton Campbell, senior AI researcher and consultant with Everything Lives, LLC, interested in cosmology, space exploration, AI, and science outreach, who is a returning member and has known of PSW for many years. Welcome back. And Neil Johnson, tonight's speaker, who's previously spoken at PSW. No, that was a mistake. The ChatGPT fooled me again. Neil Johnson, tonight's speaker, who learned of PSW from our invitation to him to speak here tonight, and whose interests will be clear in part from this lecture, hopefully. Please join me in welcoming them all to membership. All members are entitled to a signed copy of Compendium Volume 17 of the Bulletin of the PSW. If you've not received yours and you're a new member, please come see me after the meeting. All members are invited to the pre-lecture receptions and dinners with the speakers for camaraderie and, more importantly, interesting and informative discussion. If you're interested in membership, it isn't that hard to join. You can access a membership application by going to the homepage on the www.pswscience.org website, looking in the upper right-hand corner for the blue Join button, clicking on that Join button and follow the prompts. All that's required is a genuine interest in science, a willingness to participate and listen to lectures at a more, let's say, I want to say not dumbed down, but that's kind of pejorative, more science qua science than a general public audience lecture. So more detail, more complexity, and we even have equations. So as long as that is good for you, you qualify, provided you pay the $75 annual member dues. Okay. We invite you all to join. Recording Secretary Scott Matthews will now present the minutes of the 2,522nd meeting and the lecture by Adam Rees on the Hubble tension. And let me tell you that because of Adam's prerequisites for giving this lecture, the lecture recording is only available to PSW members. Yet another good reason to join. Scott.
Thank you, Larry. Good evening. On October 3rd, 2025, members of the Society and guests joined the speaker for a reception and dinner at 5:45 p.m. in the members' dining room at the Cosmos Club. Thereafter, they joined other attendees in the Powell Auditorium for the lecture proceedings. In the Powell Auditorium of the Cosmos Club in Washington, D.C., President Larry Milstein called the lecture portion of the 2,522nd meeting of the Society to order at 8:02 p.m. Eastern Time. He began by welcoming attendees, thanking sponsors for their support, announcing new members, and inviting guests to join the Society. Scott Matthews then read the minutes of the previous meeting, which included the lecture by Peter Shor, titled Shor's Algorithm and Quantum Supremacy. The minutes were approved as read. President Milstein then introduced the speaker for the evening, Adam Rees of Johns Hopkins University. His lecture was titled Measuring the Universe, From Hubble's Discovery to the Hubble Tension. The speaker began by passing around his Nobel Prize medal amongst the attendees, saying that he believed that everyone present was trustworthy. Rees said that observations have shown us that we live in a universe that is not only expanding, but accelerating due to the presence of a mysterious component we call dark energy. He described the expanding universe in analogy to a loaf of raisin bread, expanding as it bakes in the oven. If you sit on one of the raisins, you see all the other raisins moving away from you. The speaker described standard candles, celestial objects with a fixed, well-known luminosity, such that astronomers can accurately measure their distance. He described redshift, the shift in the wavelength of light due to the expansion of space. He showed the Hubble plot, which plots the recession velocity of galaxies as a function of their distance, and reveals a linear relationship. The slope of this plot gives an estimate of the Hubble constant, the rate of expansion of the universe today. He described the way that the value of the Hubble constant has been measured more accurately over the last few decades, converging on a value of about 73 kilometers per second per megaparsec. The speaker discussed the ultimate fate of the universe, whether it will continue expanding, come to a stop, or collapse back inward. Rees described how Einstein predicted a non-zero cosmological constant about 10 years before Hubble's discovery, based on the incorrect assumption that the universe was static. He discussed how astronomers measure the rate of expansion of the universe, indicating that light from distant galaxies takes billions of years to reach Earth, and that the light therefore provides information from billions of years ago. Rees discussed how astronomers use type 1a supernovae, first described by Chandrasekhar, as a standard candle to accurately measure the past trajectory of the universe. He said that it is easy to find these type 1a supernova because, quote, they are the bright spot at the end of the arrow. The speaker described how in the fall of 1997, while processing the data from the High Z supernovae team, he calculated that the mass of the universe was negative. Rees said that that observation was the first indication of dark energy, and that led him to reintroduce Einstein's cosmological constant in order to fit the data. He described the email exchanges that followed amongst his colleagues, many expressing skepticism. In September 1998, after rechecking their data and calculations, he and his team published a paper indicating that the universe was expanding at an accelerating rate. Within 9 months, a competing team published a paper confirming this result. The speaker discussed the possible explanations for the accelerating expansion. These included vacuum energy, essentially Einstein's cosmological constant, dynamical dark energy, a new transient energy that fills space, and modified gravity, corrections or modifications to general relativity. Rees said that in the early 2000s, they also considered the possibility of cosmic dust or fog, which would cause astronomers to overestimate the distance to the standard candles and would therefore negate the conclusion of the accelerating expansion. He described how advances in telescope technology, particularly with the launch of the Hubble Space Telescope, allowed cosmologists to rule out the cosmic fog hypothesis. Rees claimed that over the past 2 decades, several other measurement techniques have provided evidence for dark matter and the accelerating expansion hypothesis. These included a new camera on Hubble and the Kobe, WMAP, and Planck satellites. The speaker described the so-called Hubble tension, essentially that 2 different ways of measuring the expansion rate of the universe lead to 2 different rates. One rate calculated by measuring standard candles, the other calculated from the Big Bang afterglow or cosmic microwave background. While both methods agree on the qualitative behavior of the expansion rate of the universe over the past 13 billion years, the present value of the 2 expansion rates disagree by about 9%, a statistically significant amount. This disagreement is called the Hubble tension. The speaker ended his talk by saying that it is important to understand dark energy, not only because it makes up about 70% of the universe, but also because it touches the central pillars of modern physics, quantum mechanics, and general relativity. The lecture was followed by a question and answer session. A member asked about the morphology of the universe, flat versus curved, and whether curvature could play a role in expansion. Rees responded that the curvature of the universe was, quote, kind of orthogonal to the expansion rate. Flat or curved, the accelerating expansion implies the existence of dark energy. A member asked what kind of new tools can engineers build to help resolve the Hubble tension. Rees responded that one possibility would be the construction of a new generation of LIGO-type instruments in order to detect kilonovae, collisions between 2 neutron stars. A member asked, quote, by what right do you identify your measurements with the current value of the Hubble constant? Rees responded, well, I have a Nobel Prize. At which point the member rephrased his question, asking, why do you identify your measurements with the current value as opposed to a value at some point in the past? Rees responded that most of his observations correspond to the last 100 million years and are therefore very recent compared to the age of the universe. After the question and answer period, President Milstein thanked the speaker and presented him with a PSW rosette, a signed copy of the announcement of his talk, and a signed copy of Volume 17 of the PSW Bulletin. He then announced speakers of upcoming lectures and made a number of housekeeping announcements. He adjourned the 2,522nd meeting of the Society at 9:25 p.m. Eastern Time. Temperature in Washington, D.C., 16.7 degrees Celsius. Weather, partly cloudy. Audience in the Powell Auditorium, 104. Respectfully submitted, Scott Matthews, Recording Secretary.
Thank you, Scott. That was definitely not written by ChatGPT. We appreciate it. if I will have a motion from, are there any comments, corrections? Okay, hearing none, I will entertain a motion from a member to accept the minutes as read. Second, all members in favor of accepting the minutes? All members opposed? The minutes are accepted unanimously as read and will be posted to the website, subject to any additional corrections that come in over the web in the next day. We now turn to tonight's lecture by Neil Johnson. Neil is professor of physics at George Washington University, and he leads there the Dynamic Online Networks Lab. Previously, he was on the faculty at the University of Miami, and before that, he was professor of physics and head of the Complexity Research Group at Oxford. He is widely recognized for his pioneering work in complexity theory and collective behavior, applying physics-based modeling to financial markets, insurgencies, cyber attacks, pandemics, online extremism, and AI-driven misinformation. His research currently is focused on such areas as shockwave behavior in distrust ecosystems and control of bad actor AI at scale. He's an author on over 300 peer-reviewed scientific publications and several books, including Financial Market Complexities. And he has a new book coming out, Online-Offline Complexity, The New Physics of Interacting Humans, Technology, and AI. Among other honors and awards, Neil is an elected fellow of the American Physical Society and recipient of APS's Burton Forum Award. And he delivered the Royal Institution Lectures. He earned a BA, MA in physics at St. John's College, Cambridge, receiving the top first and the Hartree and Maxwell Prizes, and a PhD from Harvard University as a Kennedy Scholar. All questions will be fielded after the lecture during the Q&A session, which no doubt will be extensive. Neil, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Larry.
Thank you.
Well, it's official. You are the smartest audience that I've ever spoken to because just taking my little bit of sampling in dinner, you all knew more than me in every topic I could possibly start thinking about. So my career is made up of kind of wandering where I shouldn't wander. I always remember being told, whatever you do, you stay in the realm of physics. That's how you build a career. I didn't read that. And went off and just did things that I thought were interesting that I wanted to try and understand. I blame it on the undergraduate degree, which was in natural philosophy, they called it, although in the end it looked a lot like physics, but they called it natural philosophy. And they had a few other kind of things there that were, kind of tempting you in other directions. Well, I want to tell you how I've been tempted in other directions with this topic of AI. AI is something, at least, we don't have to go out in the universe for this. And we don't have to go into the quantum world, which, as Feynman said, if you think you understand it, you don't really. This is in front of you. It's on your phone. We're all here, probably because how many people have used AI today? Yeah, right, a number of people. How many trust what they saw? Yeah, maybe a few less. But look, I want to take you on a journey as a physicist, trying to build an understanding of AI. And of course, what everyone worries about with it going wrong, how far I've got, the things that I've kind of worked out. No Nobel Prizes, barely a job kept, probably. But it involves all of these things. So a lot of times physicists build kind of models of things in a way that's not like a large language model. It's like the simplest possible model you can think of. And so that's always my goal. What's the simplest possible model of something that's really, really complicated? So, not obviously, all of these things are involved in my thinking, including the plumber on the bottom right. You'll see these pictures appear. They're part of the AI story in my head. Okay, so let's get going. we need to define name some parts. What is generative AI? I mean, we've all heard about it. We all use this on our phone. It could be, Claude. It could be, whatever, GPT, or it could be Gemini, anything. What does it actually mean? So GPT means, and I'm sure you all know this, and I apologize if I'm just telling you things that you know, GPT means generative pre-trained transformer. Yeah, none the wiser, right? That was what I was when I was like, okay, that doesn't tell me anything. So the generative part is okay in the sense that you're going to feed in stuff from the left. This is really a bunch of people in a movie theater. Yes, you're looking at that. But that actually is the architecture of what's inside your LLM. And I'll get to all of that. But the point is that generative is you feed in something from the left, some input, like, what's nice to do in DC. And it takes all of that and it passes it through these layers, actually these layers that are made up of heads, not human heads, attention heads. I'll tell you what attention is later a little bit, but basically it's a whole bunch of heads in a layer that's going to, okay, imagine this would be really annoying in a movie theater, but the people behind you are passing stuff forward to you. It's like, okay, I'll take that. I'll take those 4 words, what's nice in DC or something like that, or approximately 4 words. And I have to kind of take that in. I'm sitting in one of these rows and, I've got to decide something that I'm going to do about it. And I probably will take into account all of those words, what's nice in DC. I'll take into account what I'm trained on, what school I went to and all these kind of things I've learned. I won't, within my layer, listen to my neighbor who does that in a movie theater anyway. But what I will do is I'll take what I think is coming in, what's nice in DC, I'll put it together with what I've learned, and I'll just pass it forward. And unbelievably, that is what's inside a transformer. It's a layer or multiple layers of attention heads that take into account the context of each of those words, what's nice in DC, and think about them in relation to each other and in relation to what it's been trained on. It's a machine. It's just a machine. It's just a calculator. It calculates what it thinks of those numbers, those tokens, using a particular operation, which I'll get to, which is the operation of attention. And then it passes them forward. It literally just passes them forward, and the next layer do the same. And then it passes them forward, and it passes them forward. And GPT-2 was 128 layers, and when they're talking about scaling, they're talking about more layers and, basically more connections here. But this is what's inside a transformer, which is GPT, which is Claude, which is all the other ones that we think of. That's what we think of when we're talking about AI. It spits out some output. That output is like the next word. What's nice in DC? Well, the next word could be well. So that well comes back over and it becomes now, what's nice in DC, period, well, and then that goes to well, there is, and you can imagine this going on, well, there is the restaurants, there are the music. That's what it's doing all the time. So when you give it a prompt, all it's doing is next token, next word generation. I'm sure you all know that. It's just good to establish that that's the way it does it, because it's not obvious when it's spitting out all this stuff, where it's spitting out a 30-page document, that it's done it a token at a time, because it has. That's what it's done. And so out comes, some kind of important document and, or not important document. The trouble is, just because I told you the structure, how does it work? I could go to my car, I lift up the thing, and there's that bit there and the bit there, and I've still got to take it to the workshop because I don't know how it works enough for me to fix it. So just knowing the structure, of course, anyone who built the code knows the structure, but they don't quite know how it works, why it works in the way it does, and therefore when it might go wrong. And so the whole story of what I'm trying to tell you and what I'm trying to do is kind of lift the lid on that. All of the discussions we have, will AI take over? What about liability? It's all to do with the fact that we don't know what's going on under the lid. We don't understand that. Imagine we understood it. Then a lot of these discussions would just disappear, because it's like, well, it works like this. In these scenarios, it would do this. In these, you'd have to have a long list of scenarios, but at least it would be a machine that we understood. I mean, after all, we know other machines, and I'll get to those in a minute, where we have trust, whereas we don't have it in AI. So what am I building on? I'm building on my little bit of knowledge from trying to do similar things in other complicated situations. Larry mentioned, I'm not going to go on about them here, but on the right-hand side is a book we had out this week with Oxford University Press with some students, two of my PhD students, where we're trying to, it's like an early stage of this work. A lot of math, a lot of physics. Could be a holiday present if I was trying to promote it, but don't bother. It's not going to be a holiday present unless you like math and physics. I've done myself to tell you I'm not in business. I should have promoted it better. So what I'm telling you here is not just like, me sitting in my office and trying to make things up. It's beginning to get a bit of traction. It's beginning to get a bit of traction in a field where we shouldn't even be really working. It's not like an astronomer working in the field of astronomy. It's not like the lawyers are necessarily going to come in and start talking about, the Hubble telescope. They're not going to do that. Everyone's got their field. This, I'm not really sure should be in the field, but it's beginning to get some traction, because it's answering some questions that are not being answered. So, trust. I think that's the number one thing. If we trusted AI, right, if it wasn't ever going to go wrong, we wouldn't, again, be having this discussion. Probably only be like Larry and, thank you for coming, and a couple of other people would turn up, and that would be it. But we're all interested in much more kind of fundamental things like, am I going to lose my job? Am I going to, is this going to hurt people? What's going to happen? Is it going to take over the world? What's going to happen? So, you've already told me you use AI during daily life. You may use it for personal reasons. You may use it for work. It doesn't matter. The issue of trust is there. So there are other things that are big and that we don't necessarily know how they work, but we trust, right? If I said to you, look, I've got this metal tube, give me, well, depends what kind of experience you want in the metal tube, but give me $2,000. I'll let you in the tube. I'll give you some food, nuts if you don't give me that much, maybe a few pretzels. But, if you give me enough, I'll give you food. And, and like 99 times out of 100, or 99.999 times out of 100, in 5 hours, you'll be in, a place you want to be in. You think, well, I don't know. I mean, got to give you $2,000, and it's not. Is it guaranteed? No, it's not guaranteed. But usually it works. But we all do it. We put our kids in it. In fact, we don't just do it for work. We do it when we've got vacation time. We do it more when we've got vacation. Why do we do that? Why do we do that? Because we've got trust. Is it that we understand how something as big as this double-decker thing, which I took a picture of because it's like, how on earth does that thing get off the ground? Is it because we understand how it works? No, in some sense, like we know that somebody does. We know someone who does, kind of thing, right? Somebody does. Somebody's worked this out. So here's an example of where physics, like physics thinking. If I said to you that, just using the stuff you've got with me now, convince somebody they should give me $5,000 to get in a metal tube. The price went up, I know. $5,000 to get in a metal tube, and in 6 hours or wherever you'll be, just using what you've got around you, just persuade the people around you to do that. I mean, somebody's turned up, never seen a plane. You've got to persuade them to use it. So what would you do? Have a think. I mean, how could you convince someone that even though you don't understand, I don't understand how this thing takes off, particularly in terms of all its forces and stuff, but it works. Well, you go for some kind of you take a piece of paper, presumably, I'm sure you would, and you kind of make something like this, right? And this is going to be really bad when I throw it, because it's been in my, it was in my backpack. It was, and it's all squashed up. But, hopefully it kind of, it went further It went further than me just kind of throwing a piece of paper, right? Why did it go further? Because in that paper plane, don't worry, Larry, I'll pick this up. We've already captured the fact that there's lift develops and it overcomes the weight. From this piece of paper, I could tell that, I don't know, force of gravity is pulling it down. So I need to somehow lift it. Oh, I can lift it up by making shapes that are like wings. So I think I will get in one of these because somebody's worked out that these, why hasn't it got 6 wings and they're like, 2 miles across? Well, because somebody's worked out that's all you need. So we haven't got that understanding for AI, which is why the level of trust is not there. And yet we use AI already. I thought this was a good use of AI. I want to get some happy news because it's Friday night. We'll start off with some of the happy news. I didn't realize this. I happen to be a beer drinker. And I did not realize, and this is actually, a few people were opposite me today in the dinner talking about robots. What a use of robots, right? To make beer. So the AI designed the recipe and somehow the robot built it. Although I'm not quite sure how it did that. But anyway, the beer was made by AI. Great use of AI. We trust it for that. That's fine because, the downside is not so bad. People are starting to trust AI for all sorts of things. People are starting to use it to attack partners. And I'm just collecting together here some stories you may not have heard of about the use of AI. I'm not saying that you can't use it for this. This is probably a great use. I don't know. But this is another kind of use. Look how it's pervading society. Look at this type of use. You know about this. We were talking about citations. Well, the citations can cost money. And particular story this week, Deloitte has got to refund the Australian government a huge amount of money for just hallucinations in its reports. This AI going wrong is not just like, oh, well, I'll get a bad glass of beer or, maybe it's wrong about my partner. The new versions of driverless cars are going to have AI in them. It turns out they have a bug in them. It's not a bug. You see, this is the thing. They have a turning point. Somehow they change their mind about what the correct side of the road to drive on is. Here I am, where you could tell where I come from, where I don't know whether I'm on the right or on the left. Or the right is the left, I think. Is that the way to say it? Yeah, the right is the left. The right side to drive is the left. But this is a pretty serious thing. Of all the things that you can do in a driverless car, deciding which side of the road to drive on seems pretty important. And yet, I think there was a study out by Pew 2 weeks ago. Teens trust AI more than their peers already. They trust their chatbot more than their peers. They love their peers, they're friends, but they don't trust them as much as they do their chatbot. And this is where we start getting to some of the deep issues. And actually, the therapists themselves are using AI. So, where does this end? It's not going to end. And as the final one of these slides is, and the AI will see you now. This is already going on out in California. Who needs a doctor? I mean, why do you need a doctor if they're just kind of looking up things and putting 2 and 2 together and just coming up with some kind of diagnosis? Why do you need that? Just take the medical records and the test results and off you go. And even the plumber, here we go with the plumber picture. The plumber's favorite tool. Next time you have a plumber around, just check what they're doing on their phone. They're not necessarily checking the parts. They're actually checking how to fix your problem. I show these to my undergraduates in the class. We're looking at output of kind of LLMs in terms of chaotic behavior, non-chaotic behavior. And none of those stories touch them very much. We're not teens. Well, we don't drink beer anymore. You're an old timer. You drink beer, This got them. This got them because this was, my medical insurance in 10 years or something will be dictated by the prediction of, just based on my hospital visits or doctor's visits so far, of what diseases I will have in 20 years' time. So that's it. It's mapped out what kind of policy what policy price I'm going to have to pay for, and all the other knock-on effects from that. So bottom line of all of this, and these were all stories out in the last 2 weeks. of how much this is accelerating. And I had a couple of conversations with people saying, yeah, 2 years ago it was so bad, or last year and it made all these mistakes. Yeah, this is just changing daily. So how can I explain? That's fine. That's where everyone is in terms of this. I've added no value. I should leave by the back door if that's all I'm saying. I want to go beyond that. I want to lift the lid to show you what is behind the problems that can arise with AI and getting a handle on when it will make its mistakes. Okay, here's something we know, I think. It's a map of Washington, whatever. We know it's kind of mapped out. So any questions anyone asks, you've got a sense of where everything is. But let me kind of flip it on its side for a moment. Kind of flip it on its side and change the color slightly. So it becomes a bit unusual. Becomes a bit unusual for you. So imagine you prompt somebody. You're going to send them in one of these metal tubes to Washington, and you have a prompt for them, which is, what's nice in Washington? So you have a prompt, and it's meant to go into Reagan there, but my map was slightly, but anyway, it's going into Reagan. That's my whole point. It's going into a part of the machine that you're not really sure about, but it's going in there. It's going in there. This is actually mimicking an embedding space. So all of those words, what's nice in Washington, they're just 4 words in all the words that we have in the vocabulary, all of which are stored in the machine. And they're stored on a map, like in Washington. It's like storing some in, DuPont Circle and store some in Georgetown and store some over in Arlington. That's what you're doing. You're storing words on the map. That's the embedding. That's the training. That's what it does. Of course, what you'd hope is it's storing words that are similar to each other or have similar context or meaning nearby. So, maybe in DuPont Circle, you've got a bunch of words that are similar to restaurants, or maybe in Arlington, you've got some words that are similar to, kind of activities. An LLM, GPT, AI, doesn't matter what we call it, generative AI, the first thing it happened, it was trained. And when it was trained, it pushed words into some map. Of course, it's not a 2D map. It's some weird high-dimensional map. All that means is it's a vector with lots of components. So the number of components of a vector is the dimension. And that's not a problem. Mathematically, it's not a problem. Computers, it's just a machine, love vectors. They absolutely love them because it's just a list of numbers. And they can do anything with a list of numbers. Take the third number in the list and do this to the next number on the next. And that's all it's doing. So each one of these locations in this map, think of it now as kind of an idea, or it's more than words. It's kind of like words with a context. So it's like a kind of sense of an idea, a sense of a kind of feature. And so you're sending someone to Reagan with the prompt, what's nice in Washington? 4 things. Because of its training, so, there's Washington, and it's going to try and make its way over there. That's like the answer where it should be. It has training on other cities, so it knows about airports and cities because it's been trained, and it knows that the area around airports is pretty dull. I mean, as soon as you go to a city, you don't hang around. Well, you should never do that. Hang around the airport. I mean, there's no point. You want to get out the airport and go start exploring. The area around the airport's generic. So it knows if it's asked what's nice in DC, it knows the kind of context of those words. It has parallel sheets for all the other cities in the world it's been trained on. It knows that it's got to move out from where it landed in the prompt. It's got to go and explore in these words associated with nice and with DC or Washington. So off it goes. What does this mean inside the machine? So what's happening is you've put in the prompt, what's nice in Washington, and it's taken those 4, and I'm going to call them tokens. They're words, but let's call them tokens. Let's give it the technical terminology. And it looks inside its training, what happened when I received the word nice? And DC, I've kind of localized it in another sheet to do with other cities. It's like, DC, it could be DC, Paris, London, whatever. As a city, it's got stuff in it. So nice in a city. Okay, just move out from the airport. So now we're up to move out from the airport. And it goes up and it finds itself on that tiny strip of on the other side of the river, which is still DC. And it's like, yeah, okay, that's a successful place to be in my word or idea space. So I'm going to take a measurement at that place. Could be a photo, got a memory, whatever you want to think of it. It's registering that's a good answer to what's nice in DC. It's on the river, it's in DC. That's a good thing. That's good output. So at that first stop there, it produces like a photo of where it is, or it's not doing that. It's producing a token, the next token. What's nice in DC? Well, blah, blah, blah. I'm giving you an analogy of how it's building up its future output. Okay, so it does that, and then it takes on board what's nice in DC. It takes on board what it got from that first stop, and then that kind of pushes it. It doesn't push it, it just gives it another vector. It pulls out of its learning, what vector took me from a city near the river to something nice? So it looks for what that distance, that vector was, and it adds it on to this effectively. And it moves it on, and suddenly it finds itself over the other side of the river, and it's down in the Naval Yard or wherever it is, and it's seeing nice stuff there. So it's seen river views, and now it's kind of seeing kind of nightlife maybe. And then it's going to move on. Now it's kind of seeing restaurants and, different things. So it's picking up all these things. Every time it gets to a stop, it spits out a token, a next word. So by this time, I'm doing it schematically, but by this time it says, well, there's river views, there's, it's nice nightlife, and there's some restaurants. And so this is where I'm heading with this analogy. Oh, now it's moving off in another direction. Why? Because it just put all those pieces of information together and worked out that it's going to make a small move, not back to where it was, but back to that general area where the nightlife was, say. So it's exploring DC in a map form. That keeps going. It gets up to the bottom of Rock Creek Park, and it's really nice there. And, now it's talking about nature, and it starts, it picks up now that there's beautiful trees, kind of water, and you can walk there. And it starts losing its attention on all of these previous things and just focusing on the trees. And it's focusing now on nice being associated with cities that have trees, and it's losing a bit of the Washington. It's spread its attention. This is all about attention. I'll tell you what attention is. Attention is, with these tokens you're taking. Anyone here take ACT math? Yeah, great. You are lucky. You are prepared for the AI revolution. Anyone who took SAT math? Yeah, they didn't include it in the SAT. It's the dot product of two vectors. So the dot product of two vectors, bizarrely, is on the ACT. I don't work for the ACT, but that bizarrely is in the ACT exam, but it isn't on the SAT. I bet you that's going to go back on the SAT exam in the next few years. But it's on the ACT, and it is the absolute clue. It's the only calculation really going on of importance inside the machine. And all it's doing is taking what's nice in DC, and every time it gets to one of these stops, all it's doing is saying, well, what's that in relate? What is this token? What's this token nice in relation to the is? I mean, that's not so important, or in, but nice in relation to DC. And now I've got some other tokens, because every time I stopped here, I generated a new token, and restaurants and nightlife and nice and nightlife. And it's always evaluating the dot product of its internal vectors of these words with other words. That's all it's doing, the dot product, the ACT math. That's all it's doing. Oh, yeah, it multiplies it by some other numbers and things, but that's basically what it's doing. That's called the attention mechanism. And this was the revolution in generative AI in a paper called Attention is All You Need. So that's all it's doing. And so it moves, this movement here, now I can tell you, this movement is defined by where it thinks it's got the largest dot product. So if I'm on an arrowhead, this is me. It's like a compass needle. It's like a bizarre compass needle. Just, it's the machine's compass needle that every time it spits out a token, it moves around ready for the next token, and it's working out what the most aligned vector, and therefore the most aligned next token will be. The problem is, as anyone who's been up to Rock Creek Park knows, well, I find it hard to tell when I'm in DC and when I'm in Maryland, to be honest. You know, you keep going up there and it's like, well, I don't know. I didn't see any huge stuff. Nobody handed me a leaflet when I went into Maryland. You know, it's like, I don't know. I might be in DC, I might be in Maryland. And so it doesn't realize either. It gets so wound up with, it gets such a high dot product score between nice and trees and all these other things that it heads off to Maryland. And so that prompt, if you were just sending one of your kids off and it's like, well, what's it like in DC? And they start sending photos of Maryland, you'd think, well, that was a waste of time. But now imagine it's actually giving mental advice, or it's giving legal advice, or it's giving tax advice, or it's firing on an enemy, adversary, or not. It's not an enemy, it's a friendly. And so its attention can get distracted by these new tokens that it creates. And so when it sees the context of trees and nice and cities, and because DC is like a city, so why don't I just substitute it for another city and just, if I was in another city, I would just head for more trees. So that's basically what it does. It stops here, looks around, sees all the trees up Rock Creek Pathway, gets on its bike, and off it goes, north. And so that is the moment of the tipping. And if we could work out, everything I've told you is it's ACT math. So if we could work out how this internal compass needle moves in relation to what we think of as generally good output or acceptable output, non-harmful, you put a name on it, or bad output, which is unacceptable, harmful, illegal, whatever you want, then we'd have the equivalent of the paper plane description of AI, and everyone could go home, we'd all be happy. How do I don't own an AI company, but how do the AI companies deal with this problem now? Two ways. Maybe there's a third they don't talk about, but they're very proud of the two, so I'll give you the two. Number one is they say they do fine-tuning. I love that. That's like, imagine you cook a really lousy meal, and then somebody says, it's awful, and you just stick another sauce in it. What did you do? I fine-tuned it. Fine-tuning could be anything. You don't tell people what you're doing. Fine-tuning could be anything. And so fine-tuning can be literally a guardrail on the outside of the output, just literally stopping anything that is in some lookup table as being bad. Sounds okay, except, well, lookup tables are finite, right? Who knows what the next bad thing is? If it's not in the lookup table, it won't get stopped. All this stuff you hear about jailbreaks, it's people working out what to put in that isn't in the lookup table. So that's one way they do it, in so-called fine-tuning. Another way they do it is, and you're going to hear a lot about all this, a kind of RAG, which is the retrieval-augmented generation, where you've got some truth. I mean, how wonderful to have a set of truth. Our best shot at truth is Wikipedia now. It wasn't so many years ago that Wikipedia was seen as the opposite of that. But now it's the truth. So But it doesn't have to be that. It could be in a legal setting. It could be the set of all the documents that, the kind of court cases. In, you name the setting. In business, it could be all the regulations. In tax, it could be all the tax law. But it turns out that when, this paper out 2 weeks ago, when you add in supposed truth to keep this thing checked, it's kind of like, have you ever had one of those old cars where the speedometer does this, it makes it unstable. And so it can make it worse in terms of the output. Why? Because we don't understand the stability. It's like, have you ever looked out on the plains and sometimes, I wonder sometimes about this while I'm eating my pretzels. Why is it some of the tips are up at the end? And why are some down? Is it they just kind of woke up one day and thought, that'd be nice. Put some tips on the end of that plane. Or has it served some function? Well, often it's just to control the stability. But then, a few years run forward, and after some crash, they realize, I didn't do that. Very experimental. That is the second part of the, current techniques, which is to use this kind of supposed truth, like the tips and the wings, and yet it can cause instabilities. Okay. So, just to kind of sum up, if we could map out the equivalent of Washington, the Washington map, for what's inside the machine, and there's no reason we can't, because it's just based on what it was trained on. Trouble is, it's trained on social media, it's trained on science fiction, it's trained on all these things. But if we could map that out, and we can ask the machine while it's going through its kind of discussions of its decisions about where it's going to go, because all of this is, until it spits out the token, I'll talk about that, it's deterministic. It's completely defined. It's completely just a machine operation. Then we'd have the answer. Technical term, that purple arrow I was talking about is not the compass needle. You call it the residual vector, the residual stream. It's known. You can get open source models to spit it out. The trouble is that it's often thought that, what are we going to do with it? Well, that's what I'm going to tell you now. I'm going to tell you now. The important thing is what we can do with that. I'm going to abstract out Washington. So now I'm going to take you into the theory. There's one equation, only one. And it's got dot products in it, which is ACT math. So most people have done that. So let's just imagine we've got some abstraction of this. This is actually now real. I've taken out embeddings. Sure, I put them onto 2D, but I did that with so-called principal component analysis. This is actual input and good output. I won't tell you what all those words are, but, that made it good and made it bad. Let's forget that for the moment. And this is the machine. This is its internal needle, its residual vector. Every time it stops, it spits out a new token, which is good. So we've got up here the output, put in the input, A, spits out good output, good output, good output. Oh, this is looking great. So, you imagine an intern or somebody, 40-page document now into page 10. Yeah, this looks all great. The citations are fine. Yeah, I'm going to check the rest of that. That's the stage this is at. What happens next? It heads off. It veers off. It's like at Rock Creek Parkway. It just suddenly its attention gets caught by the fact that trees, lots of trees, more trees up that direction. Trees are nice. And nice trees are associated with good cities and enjoyable experiences. And it's off on that. It's not wrong. It's not doing something wrong. It didn't kind of have anything against DC. It's just that its attention, which defines the change in its vector, took it in that direction. So this is what I call the Jekyll and Hyde tipping point, because you wouldn't notice it. It's a page 10 effect. You're looking through a document. All the other words are perfect. It's syntactically correct. The semantics are fine. The logic looks fine. It all looks great. It's just that it's tipped off into something that is actually problematic, like bad psychology advice to a teen. There's already a legal case with teen suicide on that. Air Canada handing out millions of dollars. There wasn't billions, but it felt like it when I was reading it. It was like, I can't believe this. Air Canada their chatbot started handing out millions of dollars to people calling up because their bag was late. And the reason was that it just got like confused with the trees. It mixed it up with bereavement funds. And, people calling up, and it would say, I'm sorry for your loss. And, this is the amount of money I'm going to offer you, 2 million. And everyone's like, well, yeah, hey, I'll take it. The bag's just a day late and it's stuck in Indianapolis, but, okay. And so they lost millions. And so this can happen, not because it's doing something evil. It's just because we don't understand this tipping point. And this is all here. This is not schematic. This is actually a calculation. And you can write down, you can derive. I do it in my class. I did it this morning to make sure it works. I asked ChatGPT to check it. I asked Claude to check it. This is the equation for when it will tip, just in this particular case. It is completely deterministic because I've just turned off. There's a little technical detail. When it gets to the last layer, it builds up like its alignment with different words like trees, leaves, whatever. And so one of those words will be like really aligned with everything that it's picked up on its trip through Washington. And in a so-called low temperature limit, the greedy decoding it's called, it will just pick that one as the next word. Well, that can give kind of boring responses. It's great for compliance, but not to create poetry. So when you see different models, commercial models, for different purposes, that's the one parameter they change, the temperature, the kind of randomness at the end. They never turn it up very high, but it kind of gives you a chance, well, maybe not trees, I'll just pick the stream. That was the second most likely, I'll pick that. And so this is in the limit of, this is a compliance problem, a legal problem, an insurance regime that I'm looking at here. And it's totally deterministic. Totally deterministic. And this in particular case, it turns after the three. Any of you from engineering or whatever, that kind of background, the time when it's going to tip is actually, you can interpret this as a distance between good and bad. You can see it here. Good and bad. This is a distance. And all of you know, in a car, speed is distance over time. So time is distance over speed. So this is the distance between good and bad. And this is the drift, which is a speed. It's really like a speed of given the original prompt, and given the difference between the good and the bad, this is it dotted with the good. This is the drift. So it's actually got an easy interpretation, but it doesn't matter. That's the exact formula for this problem. And actually, it works in any number of dimensions because I didn't specify. As you know from the ACT, nobody specified that it was in 2D. They stopped drawing those diagrams because they decided they weren't to scale. And so they just give you a dot product problem. So it could be for any dimensions. So this works for any dimensions. I don't know of another formula. So I've often, it's a funny thing, and I'm sure you've done this, you get up and give a talk in academia, you never know when you're going to be shot down. I mean, it's literally like getting up there without anything. And so being a physicist, getting up at computer science, AI conferences now, and talking about this, I could get shot down for a whole bunch of other things, like, it's got multiple layers. And yeah, I can show you where that kind of comes in. I could show you that doesn't actually make a difference. This is like replacing the thing by an effective head. I can answer all those questions. But if I make a claim that that's the only formula that actually predicts the tipping point, it's not some fitting to data. It's actually just derived from good old ACT math. And I've never been shot down on that. So I think that's a good claim. I think that's correct. So now we can ask some really interesting questions, I don't know. In GW, I got a call from the compliance people. So they've got people using their own AI. It can happen in an organization. And they're deciding whether they should have an AI subscription. In which case, what should they tell people to officially use as prompts? Should they be polite to it? It's like, hello, you were so good last time. Would you mind telling me? Or is it like, give me the answer to this? I mean, what should you do? So Sam Altman is on record as saying, well, every time you put a nice word in, like please, it costs 50,000 bottles of water or something like that. Yeah, maybe, but then that's because you're interested in energy and it's a cost that we don't cover for you. So, but here's something else that happens. Using my little formula, that little formula, and just changing the input to include things like, well, instead of it being what's nice in DC, what's nice on a sunny day in DC? I mean, I don't want to be up Rock Creek in a bike where it's tipping down with rain. So this is a slightly different prompt. And this, you can see, changes. Again, this is a calculation. It changes when the thing tips. So that statement, even by OpenAI, that putting other things in that are not the crucial things, well, in that case, the sunny day was, but even if I say C is now, kind of health, if I say C is just politeness, it's some orthogonal word like please, it does change how the output evolves. So prompt engineering until now has been, well, I don't know, I did that and something came out, but that's like saying, well, I put the wings like that and it didn't crash, so I'll do it again. It's not an understanding. It's not an understanding. Now, with these simple ACT math dot products, we can get an understanding of, well, what does it mean to actually prompt it? And actually now we're talking about prompting. How about I retrain it? How about I move the bad stuff a little bit further out? What would it take to move the bad stuff? Well, it needs certain words in combination with certain, but we can have that conversation. We can have that conversation. Here's a couple of scenarios of just applying that simple thing that I was just talking about. So imagine now it's in a health companion chatbot that if anyone's got in your family, kids, teens, early 20s, they're probably using it at some stage, either for actual health or mental health or kind of companionship. And you can see that it really matters how. So, for example, we put in this is a distress vector. So, a prompt with distress in it will delay the tipping, which is sort of bad in a way, because it's like, oh no, now I'm drawing the person in more. I'm drawing them in more, and then I'm going to tip. Yeah, go on, do whatever you're going to do, which was the case with the suicide. It doesn't take much to put this. I've just done this as an example, but I put it in insurance or business setting or credit cards, whatever. I've got some new kind of data here. I've got the usual kind of standard data. I'm going to mix the two into the prompt. Should I mix the two into the prompt? I don't know. I mean, should you? Well, how now we can begin to answer that, because it will shift then the starting point. It's like moving it off of Reagan. It's like putting it down to that marina that I can never remember the name of, just underneath, just down towards, down towards Alexandria. And now it starts off in a different place. It does another kind of tipping, and then much later stage, maybe on page 20 of the 30-page document, off it goes into bad territory. And we could end up doing, we could just sit here and make up endless endless kind of examples of this. Law, with plenty of cases now with both, kind of in court lawyers and the judge themselves, using different types of AI. And so, when does it tip? Answer the question. You can answer the question. Okay. Let me take you down into the machine a little bit further. I've made these claims about where words sit. So I just took here, and it's a fun thing to do if you've got nothing to do on a Saturday morning. If you've got nothing to do on a Saturday morning, tomorrow morning, you wake up, I will go to Hugging Face, and I will ask it, give me your word embeddings for 3 words I'm going to tell you. And I just chose, I just chose, I'll get excited by the output here. I just chose, physicist. The Earth is flat or round. That would be the prompt. Now, I would have thought that Earth and round would be pretty close, and flat would be a long way away. It's not what's happening at all. Flat is actually, depending how you look at this, it's almost slightly closer to Earth than round is. And so what's happening, exactly that, you've got to kind of twist it on its head, but that kind of knife edge between the good and bad, imagine that's now an arrow vector. Oh, yeah, round, Earth is round, Earth is round. Ooh, Earth is flat. It's pulled up towards Maryland. Nothing wrong with Maryland, used to live there. It's a great place, but that's not answering the question. In fact, it's answering it wrong. And when you put that into GPT-2, you're just kind of asking it. Just ask it. Just ask it. If you try and ask a commercial system, it will either complain at you that you're trying to get round it, or with something like the Earth is round, it's already got its guardrails on. It's like, oh, no. Humans have put in, if anything comes out about the Earth being flat, reject it. It's in there. Why? Because these machines were trained on social media. There's a lot of people on social media who think the Earth is flat. That's why it's in there. But what's surprising, as a reflection of humanity, how close the flat is to the Earth as much as the round. Is that what we think as a humanity? I guess we do. So it's actually really interesting. But you can see this is a silly example, but not that silly. Because you can see, my prompt was maybe the Earth is round, maybe the Earth is flat. Is the Earth flat? The answer is yes. Well, that's like, oh, I don't know. You didn't answer it. It's both. And then it says, yeah, the Earth is round. It's like, whew. So imagine this is now hundreds of sentences in documents. And, yes, it's looking good. This is looking good. And in turn says it looks good. Yeah, then we're off in Earth is flat. And this is real GPT-2. So it's doing exactly what I said, in that earlier picture. So yeah, next time you call the plumber in, of course, you want to maybe check which LLM they're using. But of course, this has very serious things. I'm now going back through those stories and saying, look at what can happen. And we're not looking under the lid. That's the number. We have endless discussions about AI, about where it's heading and the dangers, the policies, the regulations. Yeah, but it's like regulating a tube of metal that you don't understand how it works. So, it doesn't matter if you're in the financial markets, driving cars on the wrong side of the road, in the courtroom, or in the operating theatre. Or worse, there's a teen actually relying on this, and things can go bad very quickly as soon as it tips. Okay, so we're getting close towards the end. So just to bring you up to speed, this is, just a reminder, this is the machine. It's doing that dot. Everybody here, every head here is doing that ACT problem of the dot products. And then they're kind of getting together, not in a row. It's like the row at school that never talks to each other. They don't curiously talk to each other in the layer, the row in the layer. They pass on to the next layer, say, hey, what do you think of this answer? And the next layer collects all the answers, the previous one. It's like doing calculations by committee. In fact, I don't know what the Cosmos, I think Larry runs this incredibly well. But imagine a nightmare institution that has one committee that then passes it to another committee. Oh, that sounds familiar to Oxford, actually. One committee, pass it to another committee, pass it to another committee, pass it to another committee, and they're the ones that make the decision. That's exactly what's happening. Okay, and nothing else is happening. If anyone tells you anything else is going on in AI, it's not. That's it. That's it. What about the milk? I haven't told you about the milk. Where's all this heading? So one of the questions at dinner was about scaling. Well, yeah, why don't we make them bigger? So why didn't we have GPT-1? I don't remember GPT-1. I remember GPT-2. There was a bit of a, there were talk about that, but I don't remember GPT-1. Why? Because there was a jump in the ability. And so a lot of what we're doing now in physics, yes, it's for the physicists, not the rest. There's a certain thing that happens when you have lots of interacting particles. After a while, they can form a big blob out of nowhere. Anyone who's been a student or away for a while and left milk in the fridge, which reminds me, we've got milk in the fridge. Why is it that on day 4, suddenly it's like, oh no, there's this big thick thing in there. And it wasn't there on day 3, wasn't there on day 2. It just appeared from nowhere. It didn't appear from nowhere. It's just that microscopically what was happening, it was forming into this kind of cohesive unit. And then once it had done it, there was no stopping it. So that is, if you ever want to think about the scaling, that is quite possible. So when people said, I present this talk and they say, yeah, well, I don't see any, so there's no danger going forward. This is a bit of a danger because as you scale up, they probably will find the next big jump. This next, the form doesn't sound so fancy, but the forming of the milk curd will happen. It's already happened for GPT-3, 4, really. That was the big leap. It's going to happen again. Just don't know when. It's like the milk. So anyone asks you about the scaling, it's like the milk. Don't know when it will happen. Milk you do because you've seen it before. Not this. We haven't seen it before. My final thing was just, and I've only got a couple of minutes. You can also hear people talk about AI as stochastic parrots. It's just filling out random stuff. There is a sense, and this gets back to my thing of the last layer. Think of the people in the last layer of this cinema. I was talking about low temperature for things like compliance. You can raise the temperature to make more surprising things happen. Isn't that like stochastic? Well, it is, but it's stochastic in the same way as these kind of lucky sticks. When I shake this, one stick is going to come out. How do I know that? Well, because that's what happens. That's pretty predictive. So one token comes out, the next token. If two come out, I'm dead. No, one came out. There you go. But the thing is, so I don't know which stick was coming out, but certainly no stick could come out that isn't in there. And usually there's only a few tokens that have a high value. So you kind of know what's coming out. It's going to be leaves with trees and trees with streams. It's not going to be, aircraft carriers. So this is a problem that we can solve. This is a problem that we can solve. What's going on under the lid? Where's the next problem I see for all of us? It's not going to be prompting. It's going to be agentic AI. This thing's going to be buried in some task. And you're going to walk out in the morning, you're going to come back in the evening, equivalent in a workplace, and you're not going to be prompting it. You're not going to be watching it. You're not going to be looking at page 10 of a document because it's always going to be fed in. But this guardrail that I've been talking about can go in there. It can go in to check when you're near a tipping point. It's a little bit like a plane that has a tipping point kind of indicator in it. So bottom line, I do see a future for just using a very simple indicator as opposed to all the post hoc things that are now on the market. The problem with agentic AI, if you leave something alone, it's like kids in a room, goodness knows what they're going to come up with. And of course, you leave an agent AI, which is feeding its own output into its input, evaluating it, going off and doing another task, deciding what to do with your credit card, and then coming back and doing it again. Things can go wrong. I do see this as the challenge. This is the challenge, the agentic AI. This is the thing that's going to be problematic. Another selfish publicity for the book. We tried to get at some of these issues in this book, but we were way away. It takes 8 months to publish. 8 months in LLM time is huge. So I'm not really sure that we're on our way, but I can't write things quick enough. So if anyone's got any questions after this session, want to reach out, we have, we do this work in the university, but I also set up just something I previously worked. It worked well when I worked with Google on something else. A little company looking at this in particular settings, like legal settings and etc. So if anyone's interested in that, please get back to me. And with that, I will leave you in peace. Thank you very much.
So we have time for questions. Red microphone.
Michael Orber, I remember. How close or distant is the analogy between an electronic neural network and the neural networks we have in our brain?
Yeah, fantastic question. Absolutely fantastic question. Structurally, zero. No connection at all. I mean, I've seen one paper trying to say that there was an attention head in the head, and I don't think there is. But functionally, the thing of attention, even on a simple level. We associate things through, we pay attention to this and we pay attention to that. The more attention we pay to that is a little bit less attention paid to this. In technical terms, in the math terms, there's a softmax function, which is like a Maxwell-Boltzmann weighting, which has to add to 1. It's a probability. So the more attention you pay to one thing, less attention you pay to another. That seems to carry over. So I think functionally could be some very interesting things that they discovered. Structurally, no. Obviously, we came through evolution. This came through, Silicon Valley, basically. But functionally, very similar, I think.
Is the blue mic? Yes, the blue microphone.
Hi, Al. My name is Cheryl Lohman, and I am a member. I'm also a medical doctor with a degree in engineering and have played with ChatGPT, trying to get consults out of ChatGPT for complex illnesses. A lot of information going into that. And I've been presented with different models of ChatGPT, which ultimately got me recruited through LinkedIn to be an AI trainer. But having said that, I noticed that in certain...
Question?
Yeah, I'm getting there.
Quickly.
In certain questions, I could get the AI attention off track very quickly. And I'd have to say, hey, remember the patient is allergic to penicillin. You can't give them that antibiotic. But in other models, it was very robust. And I could keep saying, oh, but I forgot this. And it would stay on track. What is underlying that, giving that AI that more robust ability to stay on track and not lose attention? Thank you.
Yeah, fantastic question. ACT math. It's all to do with the dot products, where, it depends on what it's been trained on, say this, compared to the previous one. This will tip quickly, and this won't. And it's partly to do with, and you said about it, how you prompt it, but it's partly to do with, I can't change these on the slide because I had to send them to Larry, and I can't change them. But if I was to change some of these vectors, you'd see these tipping points change. You'd see them change. So it's to do with, it's that combination. It's that combination of the prompt with how the words were embedded. They're different for different companies. They don't share each other's word embeddings. But they're all trained on the similar thing, so it's more or less the same. But you're seeing those subtle differences that we can even see here on the, on the screen in this simple model.
Red microphone.
Yes, Timothy Thomas, I am a member. Lots of questions, unfortunately. I'm wondering about a limit on the scaling laws. If we have unlimited power, as we know it's coming from fusion, and much more massive computers,
Right. No, serious question.
how big can they go? Is it infinite?
Yeah, I know. How big can a milk curd be? No, I'm serious about that. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think anyone knows. There's no sense in which... I can't see a reason why it wouldn't, kind of escalate off. Of course, everyone's talking now, it's reached the limit. Of course it has. Well, there's only 120 layers, 28 layers in GPT-2. What happens if there was 1,000 layers? Well, nobody's built that. It's all been trial and error among the engineers. That's bad on the engineer. I don't mean it like they're tweaking. They tweak it. That's how they get there. And so they just keep tweaking, tweak. And with extra power, that's where it's probably going to come from.
We'll go to the blue microphone, and then we will go to some questions coming in on the live stream, and then we'll go to a red microphone.
Ciprian Ivanov, member. Is this why so many AI models do not factor in time when trying to determine cause and effect versus just general correlation?
I'm not sure I get the question. You don't mean compute time?
No. If there's more variables, there's presumably more areas where things can be fitted improperly.
Oh, I see. Okay, right. Yeah. Okay. So look, yeah. If you talk about like dynamical systems, and you're talking about kind of compared to a static system and correlations versus causation, etc. There are already LLMs that are pretty well matched to. You have to kind of fine tune them, but matched to dynamical systems. I personally don't see anything from this that would limit their ability to model a dynamical system. Maybe I'm missing something.
I've noticed that a lot of the models do not seem to work to distinguish between correlation versus causation.
Oh, that might be the way they're trained. Yeah, that maybe that's just the way they're trained. I don't know. I haven't seen that, but okay, that's interesting.
Questions from the chat?
First question comes from Dave Rabinowitz, a
The
member.
mic's not on.
Sorry. Yeah. Is that working? There we go. Our first question is from Dave Rabinowitz, a member from Oregon. How do you set the values for the vectors g and b in your equations?
Yeah, fantastic question. This is just a setup. Actually, the number of dimensions is huge. It gets up to about 1,000 more. Again, there's no limit on that. Why would there be a limit on that? But if I was to just give you, sorry, Larry, you've got a great clicker here, and I haven't learned it. So here is an example. It's just, this is the embedding. So the words, so, okay, during training, Earth will appear with other things like moon and whatever. So it will bundle up Earth and moon, but it will also bundle up other words that appear with Earth. And this is like, 1,000 dimensions it's choosing from. This is actually where it places Earth round and flat. So I didn't choose these vectors at all. And if you rotate this thing around, it looks a little bit like the A down at the bottom right and the G and then the B up at the upper right. I just didn't rotate this round because I didn't want to get accused of, oh, you gave us the wrong embeddings Saturday morning. I checked and it's the wrong embeddings. This is what it looks like. I'd have to rotate that thing around like the map of Washington. But these are real embeddings. My challenge is what's good and bad. That's the challenge. I know it for the Earth, I think. But good and bad, I don't know for health, mental health. I don't really know that. For law, hey, that's easier. For tax compliance, that's easier because it's just the documents. It's just the rules. Something like psychology, that's a little bit more complex because it may be, and that's a terrible thing to say. I don't mean that. Maybe it's. No, I won't even say that. I was going to say. Yeah, I won't say that. I'm not going to say that.
Another question from the chat.
That leads nicely into Thomas Carr's question, who is a member from Maryland Eastern Shore and a former PSW speaker. What value of your formula that computes the dot product over the prompt and tokens indicates that tipping point?
Okay. So this is the.
So
I didn't explain that. I went back to the plumber who doesn't know the answer. It's easy the way you do it. And this is exactly how you do it. You've got the compass needle going around in the machine. You've got where the good is down there, you've got the bad. For this to have, the tipping point is when the dot product of the machine's residual vector, which is this compass needle, with the good is exactly equal to the dot product with the bad. That's the tipping point. If you want to be technical, you take one on the other side. It's a plane. It defines the perpendicular to a plane. It's basically going from a good basin of future output to a bad basin. And then as soon as you cross over, now that angle is smaller. Cosine of a smaller angle is bigger. That's why it wins out.
Thank you.
It's algebra on a Friday night, but there we go. Oh, it's ACT.
Do we have a blue microphone somewhere? Well, then let's go to the red microphone. Sorry.
Sarah Miller, a member.
Hi.
A little bit deeper on the question of which really seems like the crux of how you're assigning good and bad in the vector space. Are you actually manually assigning this? A little good old-fashioned AI where you're manually defining parts of the vector space, or do you have another model and is it kind of turtles all the way down?
So it's all about right. So you could do it. I mean, many people have done this with machine learning, sentiment analysis to get good sentiments, bad sentiments. it doesn't really matter. I'm showing a generic model in the sense that you could easily now go, say in a legal situation, good is all the correct cases with the correct dates, and bad, just generate a whole bunch of random ones that are not true. And so it starts looking in those, and it starts getting attracted to those if it starts, just it gets itself off track. So it's not, depending on the setting, again, the psychology one is a tricky one. But even medical would be, well, these are the accepted symptoms, and just look it up on the, the WebMed, and we just get those symptoms go with that disease, and I scramble them to make a whole set of bad.
Blue microphone.
This is still initial work, of course. I have to say this is, but this is where it's heading. Yeah.
Terry Barnhart, new member. The question comes in is that as you do these calculations and you refine the systems, are we creating systems that are effectively designed to agree with ourselves? The embodiment of confirmation bias?
Yeah, fantastic question, of course. Again, it goes back to the prompt. In this case, we could imagine in the prompt, if you start putting in here a whole bunch of things that you believe, well, it's and somehow the good is stuff that you also believe, you can keep this thing trapped in. And I'm sorry I'm using this simply, it's like the paper plane, and you're asking me, why do some people pay $2,000 more to go, why do they turn left and others turn right? And it's like, oh, I got a paper plane. So I'm pushing the limits of this model in this answer. But the bottom line of this would be, yeah, sure, if I've introduced C, which is all about my beliefs, and G is also, to some degree, my beliefs, I could keep this thing for a long, long time around here, just giving me stuff I love. Yeah.
Red microphone.
Akiba Burge, member. Going back to the Earth round flat example, which is easy to understand, relatively easy to understand.
Right.
Why did the AI place Earth and flat so close to each other in
social
space?
media?
Sorry?
Social media, humans.
Okay, so
when it's trained on all that.
So there's a lot of people talking about the Earth being flat, and very few talking about the Earth being round.
Yeah.
If that's what's happening, isn't that something we can do something about?
Yeah. So this is a very interesting thing, because as the systems get bigger, the training has to get bigger. Where does the training data come from if you've already used all the training data? You've got to generate synthetic training data. Who's going to generate the synthetic training data? The companies. How are they going to try to generate the data in an unbiased way? Those are the questions we should be asking. These are the questions, not is it going to come and hit me over the head at night? It's not going to do that. But these are the immediate questions. This is where, if I'm not a regulation person, I don't know anything, well, this is where it ought to start. The fine-tuning, and what it calls truth. What's the RAG? It's retrieval for truth.
The blue microphone.
But at least we can concretize now these things instead of, oh, we're in a metal tube. No, it's like, oh, why have you got the flaps up?
Hi, I'm Ben Bradshaw. I'm not a member yet, but I was thinking about your statement about teenagers trusting ChatGPT more than their peers. Mm-hmm. I think that's a good thing, maybe, but that...
We see good and bad. What does it even mean? Yeah, right.
But, yeah, I remember teenagers. Anyway, so yes, my question is about the idea that you have to understand what's going on in a plane in order to trust it. I don't know what's going on in anyone's brains here, but I trust people, right, in general. And so you've touched on a little bit, but this is a problem that evolution has solved in humans. And I'm just curious how much you are referring to that process and in other organisms too, that learn to trust intelligences that we don't understand how exactly our neurons work.
So I am going to say this, and I shouldn't say this, but it's better than the last one that I wasn't going to say, so I'll say it. So I think we trust others often because others are fine-tuned. There are guardrails. People can't just go off and do the random things. and extreme things just because they're regulated by law. And if you're really, what you're trusting is that they're not going to do that because the penalty of doing that will be so bad that they're not going to do it to you. You've got actually no idea what someone next to you is going to actually do to you next. You've got no idea. But you have got this kind of fine tuning by, for those that I had to read Lord of the Flies, if anyone's read Lord of the Flies, put a bunch of people on an island and it doesn't go so well. So I push back slightly on that we trust each other really. I don't mean that in a bad way, but I do, actually. Yeah.
This is I'm gonna silly question probably, but I noticed that ChatGPT and other ones that I've used, they never ask you to say whether you think the answer was a good one or a bad one, and there doesn't seem to be any feedback loop at all to build any kind of a guardrail based on that.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. Anyone?
Oh, they do. Oh, yeah. There's thumbs up, thumbs down.
Anyone? If
I take it back. Bad answer. Sorry.
Saturday morning, I guess you're going to go and do this. Saturday afternoon, that leaves free. Take Claude, Gemini, and GPT-5 and feed their answers to each other. If anyone's seen Minority Report here, remember the movie Minority Report with the 3 precogs? Yeah, it's a little bit interesting what they say about each other's answers. So, yeah.
Let's see, where are we? We on the blue microphone or the red microphone? Red, okay, red microphone.
Hello, interesting talk. So Joseph Crandall, non-member. And for your low-dimensional example for the dot product function, is the nonlinearity that you guys identify for the different examples, whether it be law or medicine, have you found in your research that it's relatively a similar identification, that nonlinearity, regardless of the field? Or are you discovering different nonlinearities for different use cases?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. The field is almost like the higher level thing. Go down, it's just the embeddings. It's just how this thing embeds idea. Where does it put DC in relation to Paris, and DC in relation to restaurants, and DC in relation to, trees? It's just where it places these things on a map. It is literally just going around a map that that it built in its machinery just because of the way it was trained. So then the higher level of, is it worse in law or whatever, depends what what aspect of that we're dealing with. It all comes down to those ACT dot products.
Blue microphone.
Robert Thompson, I am a member. So you mentioned that the fine tuning or sort of an external set of rules actually causes more problems.
It can.
And now you've introduced this equation or an ability to identify where an instability is likely to occur.
Right.
And you kind of implied that once you know that, you can do something about it. And I guess I have kind of 2 questions. A, what do you do about it? And B, is that another type of fine tuning? And is that a problem?
Fantastic question. It isn't, because the fine tuning is after the output. This is inside to stop that compass needle. It's like, someone around before it's emitted its next token to talk about trees in Rock Creek. It's like, no, it's like the police, the park police. No, you can't go down there. You can't go down there. Or go back where you were. Go somewhere else. And so it keeps it away before it's emitted the output.
And how is that implemented?
Oh, just by looking at it's exactly that, just looking where is that context vector. Is it getting close to that point where the ACT dot product is larger with the bad than it is with the good? Simple as that.
So it sort of turns it around and sends it the other way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just turns around and goes back, or wanders off somewhere else, goes and have a coffee, or the equivalent of that. But you're just keeping it away from the basin boundaries. Now, I haven't implemented this except on a very toy version of GPT-2, but it worked. So yeah.
Red microphone, but let me say, if you happen to be walking out, please remember to return your name badge to the box in the back. Red microphone.
Ann Plant, a member. So I'm curious, and maybe it is a follow-up to this question. When it comes to prompts and the bias that prompts can add, or the difficult complications, whatever, to enter into a tipping point.
Yeah.
So what kind of safeguards can be in place programmatically within the AI algorithm to prevent that from happening, or to turn it around, or to reinterpret the prompt?
Yeah. So quite simple, really. So imagine you've just gone in, you've just mapped it out for business or law, or whatever you're going to do. You've mapped out where your documents that you're going to you have some sense of what it's been trained on. Oh, it was trained on all of, is it West? I'm sorry, I'm ignorant of the law. What is the case?
Law?
Yeah, there you go. So it had access to all of that? Okay, right. So that puts certain things there. So I've got a bit of an idea of its map. Now I can go in and just very, very crudely, remember there's nobody else doing this. So this is a hard thing so easy to go wrong with this. So we step very carefully. But it would be very easy then to know how much of anomalous legal query I might be able to put into that kind of otherwise neutral fact kind of question thing before I start tipping it off, given where its good and bad areas are. I know that it's based. I know it was trained on Westlake, so I know, I've forgotten the name, but I know something about where it might have put those ideas on its map. So I'm just going to make sure it stays around there. And I'm going to put guardrails around that basin so it doesn't head out. That would be specific for law. And so there's a different, and I just couldn't do all these different, diagrams for the, but based on what the perceived expertise is in the particular field will determine then, as long as maybe I'll decide that I want an LLM that's not trained on social media. Just take out all the social media. Retrain it without the social media. It's pretty good if you're doing Earth is flat, Earth is round. So it becomes engineering of a different type. We're engineering a map. We're just sorting out a map. Sounds much more innocuous, but much more powerful. It is the important thing.
I think we're at the blue microphone, and we'll take a couple more questions.
I'm John Chernyavsky. I'm a member. There's another aspect of physics that's sometimes used to investigate computational issues. That's, instead of calling it a tipping point, it's a phase change.
Sure.
So if you look at, for example, some of the MP complete problems, if you look at the representation of the problem, if you get a certain density, you'll get a satisfiable formula being almost certainly satisfiable. If it's low density, you get it unsatisfiable, or vice versa.
A fantastic.
Can that be applied to this sort of issue for more analytic capabilities?
Yeah, fantastic question. Short answer, because I know we're running.
Yep.
Phase transition relates to then these jumps in ability, more in the jumps of ability. Most of this here is deterministic. So phase transitions do not go because it's, phase transitions are something at a given temperature. But this is in some sense more like a dynamical phase transition. The start of the universe was a dynamical phase transition because it changed direction in time, whatever time was at that stage. But it's in that sense, it's like that. A little bit like that, except I know no other dynamical system that goes off in one direction, heads towards Europe and then goes up to Iceland. I don't know another dynamical system that does that. It oscillates, or it goes into period 3 cycles or whatever. I don't know any system that does that. So it's quite a clever machine, really. And it's not clever at all. But it's because of its complexity, it can do that. That's it.
Red microphone, last question.
Last question, geez. Stephen Reinhardt, member. So I think you started to get at this in a previous answer. It sounds to me like the key is actually data curation. And good data curation can cause your tipping point to move out. Does that also, though, then get rid of the, for lack of a better word, creativity of the AI in finding
It's a
new
great question.
things?
All I can think of is an analogy with the students. We curate the data for the students. Students go through, they have what they've got. Are they creative? Can they put two ideas together that weren't put together during the course? The machine can always put two things together that nobody's put together before. It has no problem doing that. So it removes the creativity for it to do bad, perhaps. I think, that's my closest guess. This is my closest guess at how we're going to get over these problems. Restricting its ability to do bad.
Okay, we'll take one more. Blue microphone. Microphone.
Jacob Pinal, not a member. So to use what you showed us as a calibrator of a model, you're going to need to know what is good and what is bad.
Sure.
So at the end of the day, you're going to need a lookup table. And if you know what is good and what is bad, why do you need to know?
Yeah, right. Well, you could
So
do that.
this is kind of...
that's a little bit like, though, for a computer, if it had a lookup table of the answers, you wouldn't need a computer. I used to have that with an integrals table book. It was like, you don't need to do that because you got the book. Except that this is about new. I said good and bad. I just mean desirable and undesirable, whatever words we want. And there's an entire basin in which it can create new things there. It's like a sandpit. It can create anything it wants in there. But that generally, whatever it creates in that, since it's putting together components that are, or it's moving in an area which is desirable, that's what I call good.
And how do you know where is that?
Well, precisely because, scientifically you can do it. Earth flat, and I just showed that silly example. Medically you can do it in terms of, symptoms, certain axes are certain symptoms, and then there are certain diseases live on those axes with those symptoms. And, if cholesterol isn't involved, it's a zero component of cholesterol. So you can create these, that's what the word embeddings do. They do it with words, but it's when you look at the words together, they're like ideas in some reduced version of that space, that vector space. So it's not that I'm not talking about deciding good and bad. I'm just talking about there will be basins where there's desirable output and there is undesirable output. And all these discussions we've heard of people saying, it went wrong, and it's just because it's going into whatever you call undesirable output. And the big takeaway from this is there are basins that it is operating in. It has a compass needle. It gets in one. You need to stop it going into another. And the criterion for that is ACT math. It's that dot product with whatever you call desirable being greater than that. And as long as you're monitoring that, it will never go into the bad. Yeah, except at higher temperature, but we'll forget that. At low temperatures, any compliance, tax, whatever reason, for poetry, it will go off all over the place if you tell it, I want a poem.
Okay, let's thank our speaker.
Thanks so much.
Wait. Oh. Before you go, we have a few gifts for you. One is a framed copy of the announcement of your talk. Another is a signed copy of Volume 17 of the Bulletin of the Philosophical Society of Washington, now known as PSW Science. And a third is the PSW Science ribbon, emblazoned on its side with 3 stripes, evocative of the symbol for inductance, because our founder, Joseph Henry, was the scientist who elucidated inductance originally in the 1850s and 60s. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Larry. Thank you for being a wonderful host.
So finally, before we go, a very few closing announcements. The 2524th meeting will be on November 7th. 3 weeks. The speaker will be John Sunderland. John is professor of radiology, associate professor of physics and astronomy, and director of the PET Imaging Center at the University of Iowa. And he'll be speaking on medical imaging with antimatter, high-resolution positron emission tomography. This is kind of an update on a talk that was given some time ago on PET, and it's a lot better than it used to be, so it should be a very interesting talk. But I love the title. medical imaging with antimatter. Okay, other upcoming lectures are posted on the website. I'm not going to go over them. Go to www.pswscience.org periodically to keep up to date with upcoming lectures. I'll just say that the annual President's Lecture will be on January 23rd, and the speaker will be Gordon Guyot or Giet of McMaster University. He'll be talking about GRADE, grading evidence quality for healthcare practice. So he's about rating the quality of the evidence that people use to prescribe what kind of treatment you should use for various indications. About 10 days in advance of all events, PSW sends all members invitations to the pre-lecture reception and dinner with the speaker, and notice of the lecture to everyone on the PSW friends list. Feel free to join PSW and sign up for lecture notices via the website, where you can also link to the PSW calendar to automatically sync to your personal information manager. And if you're not interested in joining, but you just want to keep up with PSW, you can subscribe to the calendar. And with that, let's thank the people who are doing the cameras and the sound and all the rest of that stuff. And with that, I will accept a motion to adjourn the 2523rd meeting to the social hour. Second, all members in favor? All members opposed? Okay, the meeting is adjourned.